James Comey testifies before Congress. I'm Adam Byrne, and this is The Square Circle.
If you have a passion for helping people, want to launch a new charity, or need to raise funds, Voluntary Solutions can help. You have a passion for helping people. We have a passion for helping you. Visit voluntarysolutionsdc.com, 844-739-5488.
Hello and welcome to The Square Circle. I'm your host, Adam Byrne. Joining us today are Gregory Clay of gdclay.com, Sasha Kaplan of elementarypolitics.com, and political reporter James Rosen. Good evening.
Good evening.
Former FBI Director James Comey made his much-anticipated appearance before the Senate Intelligence Committee today, where he faced questions from senators about the ongoing investigation into possible ties between Russian officials and the Trump campaign, and whether President Trump himself may have obstructed the investigation. So, 2.5 hours of pure news gold. Gregory Clay, how did you see it?
Well, June 8, 2017. Much anticipation, much hype. It was like the Super Bowl in the nation's capital. Totally wild on such a beautiful day weather-wise, with a beautiful blue sky. And James Comey owns the country for almost 3 hours. And it's interesting that three things that I noticed real quickly right away is that James Comey called the President of the United States a liar. James Comey outed a source. James Comey threw the former Attorney General under the bus. And from there, there's probably more questions than answers. And this thing will go on for I don't know how long. Watergate number 2. That's it for me.
James Rosen.
I thought it was extraordinary. I think there was a sense that maybe because he'd released his testimony that Comey wouldn't make much news, but he, as Gregory said, he made a lot of news, and some of the news wasn't so much substantive, although there was substantive news, but a lot of it was emotional and in my view, political optics. He called, as Gregory said, he called the president a liar, but he called him a liar multiple times, and he said that the president lied.
At least 5 times.
Yes, at least 5 times, and he said the president lied more than once. But I think even more damning was that he said that he did not trust the president to tell the truth, which is why he memorialized their talks. He was so fearful that President Trump would publicly try to defame him, as in fact President Trump later did, that he felt compelled to take these detailed notes. I also noted that he, at the very start of the hearing, as emotional as a career FBI leader can be, he was emotional. When he was asked, it may not have been the very start of the hearing, but early in the hearing, when he was asked about President Trump's comments about him, that he's, what were the words? Crazy.
Nut job.
A nut job and so forth.
Wow.
And on top of that, President Trump made that assessment, those assessments, speaking to Russians in the Oval Office, and you could just tell that Comey was furious. You could tell that he was furious, you could tell that he was hurt, you could tell that he was emotional. I thought that was the closest he came to losing control a little bit. And so I thought it was, again, I thought it was not so much what he said, although he said some quite relevant things, but it was the emotion and the power. And right now, I think, and there's a long way to go, as Gregory said, things could change. But right now, the point we're at is, do more Americans believe Comey, or do they believe President Trump? And I think the polls indicate more Americans believe Comey.
Well, Sasha Kaplan, do you agree? What did you think of his testimony?
Honestly, I have a hard time believing some of the things that he said, not because I am blind to the faults of the president or anything like that, but it just seemed like, especially particularly in his opening statement, he made a mention to a lot of unnecessary details So his opening statement to me, as I read it, sounded more like the beginnings of some kind of murder mystery novel than they did of a congressional testimony. People in the criminal justice field are taught to summarize and report facts, A plus B, what happened, how it happened, where it happened. But there's no room for silly details like where the door was in association to the dresser in the room or shelf or whatever it was.
I think he wanted to show that he was paying very close attention. I think that's why he recalled some of those. And he wanted to be dramatic.
Right.
He didn't want to be.
He does have a flair for drama.
Right.
I have a problem with that because this is not a place to flaunt dramatics and to twist little things to make them sound scarier than they needed. His job was to come in, answer questions, and report, in his view, what the truth was. Dramatizing it, I feel, hurts his credibility a little, at least a little bit.
So where do you feel it leaves President Trump compared to before this testimony?
Before this testimony, I think Trump had a little bit more credibility. I think now he's lost a little bit of it, but I still think that it's still largely hearsay. It's still largely hearsay because we're not seeing, we were not in the room when Trump met Comey. I think Comey mentioned that in several meetings that he was alone in the room with Trump. So unfortunately, we have Trump's word versus Comey's word.
He said.
And at this point, it ends up being a debate of who do we trust more. But at the end of the day, legally speaking, it's still hearsay. And
Right. Well, we don't have a smoking gun.
there is no smoking gun,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, we don't have a smoking gun. See,
Unless there's tapes.
yeah, unless there's tapes.
Unless there's tapes.
Then it will be like Watergate.
Then you got smoking gun. Yeah, because the tapes, you remember, this ultimately what brought down Richard Nixon.
Right.
And
the gap.
yeah, and the gap.
73-second
In
gap.
Rosemary Woods, that famous gap. And because the thing about Trump is that, he tweets this thing, James Comey, I better be careful because, got the tapes. But didn't he put tapes in quote marks?
Yeah, he put it in quotes.
In that tweet?
Yeah.
And
he wanted to make sure that the exact quote was made very clear.
Yeah, so does the cat really have a taping system or not? I don't know. To be real, personally, I don't think Donald Trump has a taping system.
I think every president
Yeah.
for decades has had a taping system. I would be shocked if an American president did
You really
not.
believe that Donald Trump has a taping system?
Yes, I do.
In the White House?
Yep. I do. I think every American president, we may not know about it, but I cannot imagine that an American president, because of the potential liabilities that his or her conversations involve, not only with Americans, but with foreign leaders. And so forth.
Exactly.
I just can't imagine.
Right, well then are the Senate members going to subpoena the tapes?
For the tapes, well, there was talk about that, and James Comey himself said he would be quite happy to
he said,
consent
"Lordy,
to them being
please let there be
released."
tapes.
Yes, and that he hoped there were tapes
tapes.
because he realised that would potentially corroborate his account. Do you think if there are tapes, Sasha Kaplan, we'll ever hear them?
I hope that we hear them so that we can put this whole mess to bed once and for all, because right now this is a mess. It's a very public mess, and it all ends up going back to what I said, what Trump said, what Comey said. And until we have some kind of proof in either direction, we're not going to know anything, and it's all going to be, as has been described by many Republicans, as a congressional witch hunt.
Well, maybe we should just start here. I know you said that he was being fairly dramatic, Director Comey, but do we all believe his account? Even
James
if it was
Comey's account?
perhaps it was dramatic. Because if this does come down to do you believe President Trump or do you believe Director Comey, do we believe what he said today?
I believe James Comey big time. Big time. Drama or no drama. I believe James Comey big time. And what Sasha was saying about, he did this, whole Law and Order melodramatic kind of thing, like Magnum PI kind of stuff going on, or Mannix, or I'm going old school. I'm going, Mannix aired back 1968 to 1975. I tell you what a detective you want. But the drama, et cetera, didn't bother me. Because in fact, to me, when I was reading his 7-page statement, it made it more interesting.
Yeah.
It made it more real.
Right.
And see, real people like real stuff.
And one of the Republican senators, I believe it was Risch, praised him on that very point and said this is some of the clearest, most interesting legal writing I've ever seen from a lawyer.
Yeah, Comey would be a hell of a writer. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he'd be like, this cat could be the next John Grisham, And who's the other great mystery? Tom Clancy.
Le Carré.
You know, I'm serious. I mean, he might think about that as a second career or whatever if CNN doesn't hire him first. Because another thing, let him lay low for a little while. If I'm CNN, I'm going straight after James Comey. Because I guarantee you, they hire him as a legal analyst, and he comes on the air, you talking about viewers, you know, whatever case they're talking about, I think the viewership will automatically go up. Because I think a lot of folk in the country would love to hear what James Comey says about any case. You know, forget about Donald Trump, any case.
That presumes that you believe what he's saying. Of course, after the testimony was over, Trump's personal lawyer, Mark Kasovitz, came out in front of the press. Wasn't a press conference, didn't take questions, but thoroughly tried to rebuke what Director Comey said,
Right.
saying that President Trump didn't demand loyalty.
Right.
He didn't demand that the Flynn investigation be dropped, which of course gets to the heart of this issue of obstruction. So what did you make of that?
Well, you look. You would whether he was telling the truth or not. At this point, you would expect the president's lawyer to say that. Okay,
Right.
I mean, you just expect it, and you would expect him maybe to believe that he was telling the truth, because we've seen multiple times when President Trump has sent underlings out and had them say things that later turned out not to be true. So just because President Trump's lawyer says that doesn't make it true. You have to ask yourself, and on the dramatic thing, little touches, I don't think it was overly dramatic, but I want to say one thing. I think that Director Comey, he wanted Americans to understand just how extraordinarily dramatic some of this stuff was. Okay, shooing everybody, the Attorney General, the Vice President out of the Oval Office and having a one-on-one talk with him. And I think he felt that in order to make Americans understand how extraordinary and unusual, and in his view, wrong it was, he did try to dramatize it. He did try to dramatize it a little bit. But I think that I think the problem with President Trump's credibility is that he has said so many things that even Republicans have said are not true, that you know he has a credibility problem.
And Sasha, the fact that it was President Trump's personal lawyer, what do you take away from that? This wasn't a White House communications director, it wasn't Sean Spicer, it was President Trump's personal lawyer. He was lawyering up, essentially.
I think he's taking this very personally, because it's not an attack on his actions, it's not an attack on the administration. This is directly Comey going after Trump, and whether you believe him or not, which I don't fully not believe him, but I think he believes this is how things happened. You know, we perceive things in one way or another all the time. That does not necessarily make the intention behind it correct. So, but I don't know. I definitely think he's taking it personally. And look, let's not sugarcoat it here. Our president is not a charmer. He's not a schmoozer like President Obama was. This is a guy who says what's on his mind and forget anybody else.
Right.
That, unfortunately, gets him into trouble.
Right.
What really gets him into trouble is he thinks that's charming.
Charming, right. His version of charming and yours is most different, shall we say, polar, or opposites diametrically opposed, however you want to say it. However,
Chris Christie said that was standard. Some of the stuff, did you all hear that?
Yeah.
Chris Christie, the former governor, or is he still governor?
He's still governor of New Jersey.
It's unbelievable that he's still governor. But anyway,
Yeah.
the governor of New Jersey said that some of the stuff that Trump allegedly said to Director Comey and other people, he said that's just New York City talk. But I mean, that shows, in my view, that shows Christie's political.
I mean, Christie, is a very big charmer.
Right. But I mean, the whole point is when you're president, you don't talk like you do when you're on the New York City streets. I mean, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, you got to cool it with that bravado, machismo, New York accent. Well, because somebody called Donald Trump, a mafia cat in the White House.
Right.
That whole style, with the nice suits and the nice ties and the bread and
the threats.
The threats. Tie a cinder block to some cat's ankle and drop him in the Hudson River or the Harlem River or whatever. That whole New York scene. But still, though, to me, Donald Trump won't be in trouble, the T word, trouble, until the Republicans turn against him. Again, just like Richard Nixon. Because remember, what happened in 1974, August 7, 1974? It was a Wednesday. Hugh Scott, John Rhodes, Barry Goldwater went down to the White House, told Richard Nixon, "Hey man, you're losing support among the Republicans. You're in trouble. Chances are great that you're going to be impeached." Okay. Then August 8, Richard Nixon called that prime time announcement. I remember watching it. For the best interest of the country, blah blah blah. I will resign effective noon tomorrow. That noon tomorrow was that Friday, August 9, noon. Richard Nixon got the hell out of Dodge, got on the helicopter, did his V sign in the air before he took off. He was gone. And Gerald Ford comes up. But the Republicans must turn before this whole thing turns.
So let me jump off quickly on that. I think that given how early all of this is at, this investigation, and how much more we have to go, I think in a subtle way it's already started happening. I was astounded today at how deferential the Republican senators were to Director Comey.
Right.
They didn't lay a glove on him, and most of them didn't try to lay a glove on him. They didn't criticize his motives.
Right.
They didn't criticize some of his past accounts of things. They were very deferential, and even more importantly, President Trump did not have a single strong supporter on that committee. Right. And if that's the situation now, and we can assume that more things are going to come out, you can see where the Republican support will go.
Okay, well, I'd like to pick up that point with Sasha Kaplan in just a moment, but for right now, I'd like to remind our viewers that you can submit your questions to our guests through our website, www.publicsquare.net, and we'll answer as many as we can live on air towards the end of the show. This is the point where we usually move on to another topic, but there's only one show in town today. So, did we see Paul Ryan's remarks after the testimony when he essentially said about President Trump's conduct with James Comey? Well, the president's new to this. It wasn't a full-throated defense, exactly. And is that the case? Is this just President Trump being naive because he's not been in Washington his whole life, or was it obstruction of justice? Was that the aim?
I think that Trump is very good at playing business games. He is very good at being the boss man. He is not very good at playing politics in Washington. And Washington politics and running a business or a corporation are two very different things. And this is I want to say that, it's been far longer than 100 days at this point. With the amount of advisors that he's had and the people that he's talked to, it's not something that comes easy to a lot of people. You really gotta... This is the reason why a lot of politicians come into power and they stay in power as senators and congressmen and stuff, is because they know how to walk the walk. Trump he's just so used to the way that he has run things and the way that things have been done. He's not sure how to play that game. And this is not a defense. I think that is actually a very big weakness for him. I think that's part of what gets him into trouble, is that he doesn't quite fully understand the limitations of his position. Part of it, I think, comes from, again, his experience as being a boss. There was a few months back, there was something about him saying that, Congress works for him, or they'll answer to him if they don't do this. And it's, I'm sorry, Mr. President, but Congress does not work for you. Congress works for the people. We don't have a monarchy. We have a representative republic. We have three branches of government.
Okay, but what of the question of that inexperience? You say it's a weakness, but is it potentially a defense at this point? Was it not just naivety that he was saying, hey, look, Director Comey, can you just let Flynn go? Or is he purposely trying to obstruct the investigation?
I don't think he's purposely trying to obstruct the investigation, or at least I would hope, because this investigation can just put this all to bed in either direction. It will either show that, Trump was elected legitimately, or it'll show Russian hackers, or whatever it is. But the fact that his remarks were interpreted this way creates a picture that, you're right, that it creates this picture, this image, that he's trying to obstruct justice and impede the investigation, but it's actually to his benefit, if he really believes that this is not the case, to let the investigation continue.
And Director Comey did say that President Trump said that the investigation should continue, and mentioned that, well, you know, I haven't done anything, but if any of my satellites have people connected to his campaign, perhaps, then it would be a good thing.
But let me make this point. Sasha said a number of interesting things. But if he was naive, okay, he would not have asked the Attorney General Sessions to leave the Oval Office. He would not have asked Vice President Pence to leave the Oval Office. I can't remember if he asked anybody. I think those were the two principals, certainly. If he was not...
Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner,
yeah. And I don't know if Priebus was...
Is the president not allowed to have a private conversation with someone?
No. And then Priebus interrupted and was quickly shooed away.
But why would you, if you're going to talk about a key matter of law and charges and so forth, and investigation, why would you ask the Attorney General, in particular, to leave the room? And so I think that shows that he wasn't so naive, that he knew what he was doing was edgy, risky, raw, unusual, et cetera, et cetera. He has very good political instincts. Let's remember this. He beat 16 much more seasoned politicians to win the Republican nomination and then the presidency. He has very good political instincts, and I think, I mean, I agree with some of what you're saying, but I think that example shows that it was not naivete. It was calculation on his part. Exactly. He knew that he was doing something, really pushing the envelope.
You seem to agree?
Yeah, I agree with Rosen 100%. You know, this might be the first time ever. You know, but anything can happen in our society.
Trump unifying America.
Can you believe it? Hey, Donald Trump is the only cat in the country. Think about it. The only cat in the country, you know, who can get Chelsea Clinton, you know, to agree with him on something. Remember when she spoke out against Kathy Griffin about the beheading thing? Yeah. Who else could do that? But anyway, I don't think Donald Trump is as naive as Paul Ryan made it out to be. I think what he did with James Comey, wanting to be alone with him, was a consciousness of guilt. You know, I think it's obvious. You know, the cat knew he was up to something that's shaky, is dangerous. You know, maybe not illegal, but definitely ethically.
Ambiguous?
Ambiguous. Yeah, exactly. That's a good word. I like that. Ethically ambiguous. I like that. EA. Ethically ambiguous.
We touched on President Trump's lawyer, Mark Kasovich. One of Kasovich's allegations that he leveled against James Comey is that Comey was a leaker for sending out this memo which he'd created via a friend to the press. What do you make of that, Sasha Kaplan?
I feel that's a bit of a stretch in terms of leakage. It wasn't a confidential matter. They were not discussing matters of national security. They were not discussing anything that is, you know, code word clearance or classified in any way. It might have been in poor taste to do something like that and just, you know, publish. You know, I'm not going to publish every memo I sent out to my boss if I think he did something wrong, you know. But at the same time, it's not evil, it's not illegal, it's just, it's iffy.
Okay. Well, this is the point where we would like to take some questions from our viewers. And the first one comes from Stephanie Chandler. It's an interesting one which I hadn't considered before. And she asked, what could the Russians have offered after the election that would have been of interest to the Trump people? Because, of course, we often think about what Russia could gain, but what did they have to offer?
Well, the sad thing for the great deal maker is maybe nothing. I mean, that's actually a very astute question because of Trump's self-made reputation as a great deal maker. You would have to have thought that they were offering quite a bit, indeed. And who knows? I mean, maybe they were just offering dinner at the Kremlin once a month with Vladimir Putin. I don't know. You know. But it's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were offering Donald Trump some post-presidency benefits, amenities, you know, after he leaves the White House. Hey, you know, you do this for us, we'll make damn sure you have a building in Moscow, Stalingrad, Leningrad, wherever, you know, and without any kind of red tape or anything.
Was it potentially about maybe business deals or?
I don't don't know. I honestly am going to agree to a point with James here that, that I don't think Russia really has anything to offer other than we'll stop killing rebels. If you let us keep Assad in power, we'll help you defeat ISIS or something. That's the only thing that I can imagine that they would have to offer.
Let me quickly add one thing.
Quickly.
They might have said that if they have Trump over a barrel and they have intelligence on him doing illegal, unseemly things in Moscow with Russian spies, with whoever, they may have just said, we'll keep all this mum if you play ball
So
with us.
perhaps Stephanie then is putting the cart before the horse, and
That's
it's the
under
other way
the
around.
assumption, though, that Trump had direct dealings with people at the Kremlin and officials as opposed to his
Yeah,
administration.
which we don't know yet. But we need to move on to our second question, which is from Gerard Long, who asks, and perhaps he sent this in to us just before the hearing today, did Democrats overhype the Comey hearing over the
Yes.
past few days?
Yes,
way.
absolutely.
No way.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
Sasha Kaplan, we'll let you pick up on that.
Look, the media has been obsessed with Trump to the point of insanity for this entire time. I'm not saying that there wasn't some necessity to hype it up a little bit, but I do think that the Democrats and the media in general overhyped this whole thing far larger than they should have. If the media and Democrats had paid this much attention to President Obama, he would not have been reelected. I'm going to go
Lord
there.
have mercy.
I'm going to go there. I went there.
Lordy, the word of the day. But we'll have to
Lord have mercy. I
wrap
didn't say
that up.
Lordy, I said Lord. Lord have mercy, help me.
We'll have to wrap that one up there if we want to have time for our most underreported story of the week. And Sasha Kaplan, our first time together, why don't you start?
Sure. The Senate has pitched the Taylor Force Act in hopes that this will pass into law, which stops all U.S. aid to the Palestinian Authority unless they end pensions to terrorists. As you know, the Palestinian Authority at present pays terrorists who are convicted or their families if they are killed in the act of killing Jews and Israelis. They pay them pensions. Very, very nice pensions, some of which end up coming as a result of U.S. dollars, and that is not okay.
Okay. And James Rosen, your most underreported story this week.
Well, I'm going to go back to today's hearing, and it's hard to imagine that anything's underreported, but there's been so much focus on other things. But what Sasha said, I apologize, about the leak, it was a leak. It was a leak. It was the head of the FBI giving very sensitive, it wasn't classified, although I think it could have been, but it was very sensitive personal information to a professor at Columbia University, a friend, and directing that person to release it. And I think it's extraordinary that not just some agent in the FBI, but the director of the FBI did that. I don't recall anything like that in our recent political history.
Okay, and Gregory Clay, your most underreported story this week.
Yeah, at the National Domestic Workers Alliance convention earlier this week in New York, it was reported through a survey, a study that of black working mothers, 70.7% of them are the sole breadwinners in their households, double the rate for white working mothers. That's it.
Okay. Well, that is all for this week. I'm Adam Beer. Thank you for watching The Square Circle. We'll see you next week.